Had our first full day of spring training for the Cleveland Guardians. All the position players reporting to camp. Syllabus day for the guys who weren't there. We're not talking about syllabuses today. We're talking about what we're buying, what we're selling, what we're holding on a Stock Watch Wednesday edition of Locked On Guardians.
Tanner Bobby of the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to today's episode of Locked On Guardians. I'm your host, Justin Latta. We're going to get into Stock Watch Wednesday. We're going to talk about some stocks we're selling for the Guardians, some we're holding, and what we're buying for the Guardians so far in spring training heading into 2025. Before we get started, I'm Justin Latta. I've been covering the Guardians minor league system all the way back since 2007. You might have read me at some random blog at some point all over the blogosphere. I, at one time, was the editor-in-chief of Guardians Baseball Insider for a couple of years. Now I am the freelancer at the News Herald, the Morning Journal, Prospects Live, over at my own Substack at nextgencleveland.substack.com. We'd love if you join me over there for some additional prospect content. I'm here with you on Locked On Guardians. Thank you for tuning in. We are free every day, everywhere you get podcasts. You're covering your Cleveland Guardians every day, 5 days a week. So I know it's cold. I know it's snowy in Ohio, and talking about spring training and baseball seems preposterous, but there is baseball going on, and we're talking about it 5 days a week. And on this episode of Locked On Guardians, it is a Stock Watch Wednesday. So let's talk about what we're buying. Let's just start off with the buys for 2025. What am I buying on the Guardians 2025? The first thing I think I'm buying, and I talked about this a little bit on Tuesday's episode of the show, was Kyle Manzardo's full-time role. So we talked on Tuesday about David Fry being out for at least 2 or 3 months to start the season, and that giving a chance for Kyle Manzardo to play every day. You know, you've got Carlos Santana, who is a switch hitter who struggled against right-handers last year, or left-handers, I should say. No, it was right-handers. I'll have to go double-check that. He had some platoon splits last year. I think it was issues against righties. So you've kind of got that natural platoon split, so you might be able to open up some at-bats at DH for somebody, but I think the plan is going to be to play Carlos Santana every day at first base, and Kyle Manzardo DH, and then obviously Manzardo taking some first base at-bats when Santana needs a break to DH or just take a day off, even though Santana likes to play every day. So I would bet on Santana being in the lineup 7 days a week most weeks. You're going to get a lot of Carlos Santana. But as I said, I think Kyle Manzardo needs to take some at-bats at first base away to keep Santana fresh at his age, even though it looks like Santana is going to come into camp in the role of best shape of his life at his age. And he has certainly taken care of his body to play this long in his career at this point. But I'm buying Kyle Manzardo in a full-time role for reasons I talked about again on Tuesday. He improved against lefties in the minors last year. Now, it was a small sample, but it was the best sample he's ever had against lefties in the minors. And he's going to have to play every day. I mean, you might be able to give him some days off against tough lefties, but he's going to have to play. I think the realistic option while David Fry is out is he is going to DH most days and play first base on occasion. And I want to see him play first base a little bit more. But that doesn't mean there's not going to be bumps in the road for Kyle Manzardo if it's going to be his first ever, quote unquote, full-time role. I think there's definitely going to be some struggles at points in there. But I think for the balance of the 25 season, I think I'm buying what Manzardo did in September, which was an 873 OPS. I don't know. Will it be that high? Probably not. There's going to be some ebbs and flows for being a young player and maybe being exposed to lefties for the first time of this quality, not AAA. We know there's a gap between AAA and the majors. But I do think on the balance of the season, I do think we're going to see a really good year from Kyle Manzardo. I think this is a guy who needs to stake to a role because look behind him, you've got Ralphie Velasquez, who isn't really that close. It was Lake County last year and he went through some struggles. You got CJ Kafis, who did have a really good year last year and did show some things at Akron. He should start the year AAA. So Kafis is a little bit closer. Although I don't think Kafis has Manzardo's raw power. A lot of people had said Manzardo doesn't have traditional raw power for a first baseman, and that might be true, not in the traditional sense. I think he has enough, especially doubles power. I think you'll get some more gap power, not dissimilar to Carlos Santana in some of his more consistent years. He had some peaks there too. But I think Manzardo's got to establish his future here now, and I think this is the year to do it. And I think I buy that, given the opportunity to face lefties, given the opportunity to get everyday at bats, he is going to be a guy who will learn the league, will figure things out, and will come out on the other side of having a really good season. And they need him. The Guardians, in order to have a successful 2025 season offensively and get to the playoffs and do whatever they're going to do in the playoffs, they need a good season from Kyle Manzardo. So maybe it's a little bit wish casting, but I am buying Kyle Manzardo. Can't talk on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Guardians in a full-time role. So let me know if you are agreeing or disagreeing, buying or selling Kyle Manzardo in a full-time role in 2025. Like I said, a little bit of wish casting there. I know it has to happen, but I believe in the player here enough. He was my top-ranked prospect a year ago because of the safety a little bit, and I think there's enough upside. So I'm buying that one. Let me know. My second buy for the Guardians, this is going to encompass a whole group, but it's the pitching staff. This is an easy one, not something you're really, bringing a hot take on here, right? It's the whole pitching staff. The bullpen's going to be fine, but I think the starting rotation, I am buying a big improvement in the rotation from a year ago. And that's, again, buying low because there's really nowhere to go but up with the rotation from last year. You had Tanner Bybee, who was the, de facto ace for most of the year with Bieber out. Ben Lively was the savior. And beyond that, it was just a mess of characters. We talked on Tuesday's show again. You had Spencer Howard making starts. You had Xavier Curry making starts. And you had Carlos Carrasco, who made the second most starts. Can't have that again this year. I don't think that will happen. So you've got Bybee. You've got Williams, hopefully healthy all year this year. But you also got guys like who are going to come in, like a Jacob Junis is going to compete. You got Joey Cantillo, who's got some seasoning under him now, right? You're going to see what now Logan Allen's got to compete for a job. Now Tristan McKenzie has to compete for a job. These aren't guys you're sticking in the rotation. And you think, it's our entire fate this season is tied to these guys' success. It's not. Luis Ortiz is here, and I'm excited about Luis Ortiz. And Slade Ciccone is going to be stretched out as a starter, and I'm buying on Slade Ciccone specifically when you talk about this group of pitching. So the competition is going to make everybody better. It's going to make them deeper. You're going to get Shane Bieber back in the second half. And then you're going to have, like I said, you're going to have Slade Ciccones. You're going to have Joey Cantillos, the Logan Allens, and Tristan McKenzie's have to compete now. And then you've got Doug Nikhazy, who can step into a role at some point. And who knows? John Means, come August, they said the return date is August. Who knows what he can do by then? So you've got a lot more competition and a lot more fallback options this year. You don't have to worry about claiming Spencer Howard's to make starts and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a buy low, but it's an easy buy here. The pitching staff is going to be better this year. The rotation, I think, will it be one of the best rotations in all of baseball? Probably not. I don't know if I can sit here and say confidently on February 19th that I buy what you're going to get out of Gavin Williams, what you're going to get out of Tristan McKenzie or Logan Allen if they play roles this season. But I buy there's enough competition. I buy there's enough improvement here that they're going to be better than they were a year ago. And that's even with those guys and those question marks. I think you're still going to have some proving ground there and some hiccups trying to figure all that out. But I think they'll be better than they were a year ago. And that's, again, not saying much. The last one I'm buying, this is maybe my hot take for the year. I don't know if it's a hot take, but it's where I'm going to go. I am buying Lane Thomas in a contract year this year. I think we are a year removed from Lane Thomas being a 3-win player, which again, not anything sexy, not fantastic, but good. A 110 WRC plus, a guy who was a 2020 center fielder for the Nationals. They didn't trade him at age 27. They would have gotten more probably if they traded him then. And he had a really rough go of it early in the year with a knee injury for the Nationals. He had a rough go of it with the Guardians after he got in Cleveland. Had a good postseason for them, obviously. I buy that we're going to get a 2020 season out of Lane Thomas. And the defense in center field, it looks like he's going to play mostly center field. It's probably going to be hit or miss. I don't think you're going to get a net positive in center. I think he'll be a little bit better. I think the knee, the whole season, if he's healthy and past that knee injury, I think you're going to get a much better version of Lane Thomas this year. It's a contract year. He stole 32 bases a year ago, hit 15 home runs, and really didn't have that great of a year. Those are pretty good markers for a down year. It'd be great to get a little more defense out of him, but this team definitely needs speed. They need guys who are going to steal bases because you lost Jimenez, and right now it's Jose, and I don't know who else is going to run because Quan had to deal with the hamstring injury a year ago. He's had those in the past. He's got to be healthier for a full season. I don't know what chances he'll take on the bases, but I think Lane Thomas is motivated to go out and have a good contract year. He's got some skill set this Guardians team needs. I like to see him walk more for sure, but he's going to be in a good environment. He's comfortable here. I think that the team accepted him very well. You saw a lot of them playing Rocky Top during the postseason last year. That was all because of Lane Thomas. So I'm going to buy that Lane Thomas is going to have a very strong, impactful contract year for the Guardians. Who knows? Maybe they'll even... No, I'm not going to go that far. I was going to say, hey, maybe we'll see a qualifying offer for Lane Thomas at the end of the year. Not going to go there. Not going to go there. But I buy a really good year for Lane Thomas in his contract year. All right, we come back. We'll talk about who I'm holding on. So, guys, I'm not really buying, but I'm not ready to sell yet, or ideas, I guess. This can be anything we want it to be. I've got a couple there. I'll talk about sell. And then we'll also look at some names on the depth camp roster, too, that I came across. And we'll see who's interesting over there, and we'll tell you what that really is on the rest of this episode of Locked On Guardians. Baseball season is right around the corner. I know it's cold and snowy. It doesn't feel like it, but it is. And I know we're all reaching for a snack during the game. Look for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious. Crack into a good source of protein with wonderful pistachios, one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, gives you 10% of your daily value, and they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats, keeping you feeling fuller longer. The no shell variety is really good. You know, you're not leaving a lot of mess with shells all over the place. It's a good grab and go snack. You can eat at the ballpark, at your desk, on a road trip. Good, quick protein boost. My wife is a big fan of pistachios at home and at the ballpark. So you will love cracking open every shell. It's satisfying that in-shell options are always a classic favorite. So get snacking, get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Appreciate you guys tuning in again on a Wednesday, Stock Watch Wednesday edition of Locked On Guardians. If you are new here, you're getting this far, thanks for getting this far. And again, we appreciate all of our everydayers. Got to do some shout outs to some everydayers. I know David has been emailing me some good stuff the last couple of days, some formulas for prospect rankings, some spreadsheets. I got to take a look at those. So I appreciate David doing that. Appreciate all of our insiders texting questions about John Means, about Parker Messick. There was some stuff we talked about on the insiders. That was Matt McPhee. So appreciate all you guys on there. If you want to be an insider, you want to text about whatever's going on with the Guardians, you want news whenever we get it. If you wanted access to bonus episodes like our leftovers, which we do once a month, which is just kind of leftover topics we haven't really gotten to that may not be directly Guardians related, but they are Guardians related and they're baseball related, and a monthly Q&A with our subscribers only. Become an insider. It's a lot of fun. We're enjoying it. And I know Jeff's got some draft content over there now, which is a lot of draft data. So if you want access to that, that's part of being an insider as well. And hey, we are under 100 subscribers away from 4,000 on YouTube. So we really appreciate that. Who's going to be 4,000? Who wants to be 4,000? Let's get to 4K before we get to the regular season. Only 100 away. So I think we'll get there. Looking forward to that. Appreciate everybody who has subscribed and been supporting along the way. We could not do this without you. We appreciate each and every one of you. I appreciate each and every one of you, especially these days, and having this connection. It's super important to me, and I hope it's just as exciting for you as well. All right, let's talk about who we're holding. Not selling these guys, but I'm not buying yet. I'm going to hold and see if this becomes a good idea long term. And the first one, I had the debate back and forth on who I'm holding on. And I'm holding on Bo Naylor's offensive production. And here's why. Bo Naylor had a really rough 2021 as a prospect. He had a really good 2019 as a prospect, had the COVID year, came back and offensively really struggled in Akron to the point a lot of people dropped him from what might have been a starting role. And he came back, and I think I've talked about this multiple times on the show. He came back in 2022, had a fantastic season, and really he was up on the Major League roster at the end of the year, right? He was here for the final week of the regular season. He was on the postseason roster. Guardians really saw him turn things around in 2022. And then 2023, we did see, as after he got his feet wet a little bit, after he struggled, 2023, we saw the offense in the second half for Bo Naylor really take off. And then last year was just, there's no other way to put it. It was an abject disaster. The offense was terrible a year ago. Everything was down. Chase rate was bad. Swing and miss was bad. He wasn't walking like he was used to. Wasn't making a lot of contact. It was bad. There was no way around it. I'm going to hold for this season Bo Naylor's offensive production. I think it wouldn't take a lot. I think it would be really good if the Guardians could just get something close to league average. I'm talking like 90, 100, which would be way more than they've gotten. Obviously, Bo Naylor's second half of his 2023 was the best offensive production this team has seen since the days of Yan Gomes or that one random year in 2019 by Roberto Perez. So we're not asking for much here. We're just looking at, like, again, 90 to 100 for Bo Naylor. Framing was fantastic a year ago. Could throw runners out a little bit better. Blocking was hit or miss. Just really needs some close to league average offensive production from him. Would go a long way for him, go a long way for this lineup. And he's bounced back before, and we've seen it at the major league level briefly. I still think it's in there. I think he can get to league average. So I'm holding on to Bo Naylor's offensive production upside for 2025. Let's talk about Angel Martinez's role on this team. I'm holding on to that. We've talked a lot about Juan Brito at second base. Obviously, we know Travis Bazzana is the future. We're talking about Lane Thomas in center field and a contract year, and he kind of seems to have the everyday role there. Where does that leave Angel Martinez? I don't know. I truly, at this time, I cannot tell you. But this is a guy who we thought was going to be out for the season in 2024. He had the hamate issue in spring training. He had the other injury, he had the foot injury in spring training, and he was having a really good spring last year. He was really impressing the major league coaches, and he got into center field. He played some infield, ended up being part of the major league center field experiment before they traded for Lane Thomas. And that was after coming back from a hamate injury. We thought it was gonna cost him his entire season. I still think there's a role for Martinez here. I don't know if he's going to start the season on the big league club. I don't see where there's necessarily a fit right now. I mean, maybe it's second base. Maybe he does impress at second base. Everyone wants to point to Juan Brito, and I do like Juan Brito as a prospect, but I've also liked Angel Martinez. I was a big fan of his in 2023. He didn't have the best 2024, obviously, with a lot of things going on. He did make his debut, though. I'm sorry, 2022 was his best year. 2023 was a down year. 2022, great season at the minor league level at high A and double A, and then was down in 23 and then rebounded a little bit in 24. I still think there's a future for him here. I don't know where it is between second base and center field. I'd like to see him get a legitimate shot at second base because I think there are things he can do that can help this team. I think there's some impact in the bat there. I think he can run. I think he'd be a good defender at second base. He could play center field if you need him to. There's a lot of value there. Maybe he's more of a utility guy, but I do like him in that role. I think there's something there. It's just hard for young guys to be in a utility role. It's very hard for a young guy who doesn't have a lot of major league at bats to sit on the bench and play once or twice a week. And that's the good thing about Stephen Vogt. Stephen Vogt was good about getting guys into lineups every series. If you didn't play the first two games of the series, you played the third. There was none of this, only playing on Sunday thing. He got everybody in on the roster, kept them fresh. So I think that would benefit Martinez a little bit too. I don't know what the role is maybe there, but I do think there's something he can do. So I'm going to hold on to Angel Martinez's future with the Guardians and what that might look like. The last thing I'm holding, I want to buy this, but I'm not going to buy it just yet because I've seen too much here. It's Joey Cantillo's late season, we'll call it a breakout. He dominated the White Sox, and that seemed to sort of change things for him. I don't want to buy too much into one start. But look, he threw 20 really good innings in September. Is that enough to buy? That's why he's not in the buy category. Not enough to buy here. But I have liked Joey Cantillo for a long time since the Guardians acquired him. The changeup is legit. He improved the fastball enough. It's not a high spin fastball. It doesn't have a lot of great shape to it, but he gets a lot of extension, and he can throw it in the mid 90s when he needs to. I like the curveball quite a bit. I think the arsenal is there. It's really been about health and control for him. If he can come back and show anything close to what he did in September for this team, I really like that role. I don't know if he makes the rotation out of spring training, honestly. Like I said, maybe they will be committed to Tristan McKenzie's last stand. Maybe they won't be. Maybe they'll take the guy who's the best in camp, and maybe that ends up being Cantillo in the 5th spot, and who knows where McKenzie goes. But he's got competition. There's Slade Ciccone, there's Jacob Junis. There's a lot of guys, and we haven't even mentioned Paul Sewald. Like, I know he's going to the bullpen, but like the bullpen's a little more crowded now. And Junis and Sewald are guaranteed major league roles, and Ciccone could go to AAA, but Cantillo could too. And I don't necessarily think it would be a bad thing for Cantillo to go to AAA. Hold on to depth, because here's the thing: if you don't hang on to Tristan McKenzie and you let him go, that does take away a depth option. I don't know if he'd pass through waivers. Teams need pitching. Did you hear that Alex Cobb got $15 million this offseason, $16 million? Teams are desperate for pitching. So if you let Tristan McKenzie go, it takes away one option you've got in your stable this year. And maybe McKenzie isn't the answer, and maybe it doesn't matter. And maybe that should go to Cantillo if he has a good spring and he proves that what he did in September was the real Joey Cantillo. But it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing to go to AAA just for depth, but I'm holding on to hope that Joey Cantillo, he wasn't healthy all last year. Again, Joey Cantillo missed a good chunk of the first half with a hamstring issue, so he continues to have health issues. So I'm holding here, waiting for that next healthy season for Joey Cantillo, which will be his first since 2019, truthfully. He's had shoulder issues, abdominal issues, hamstring issues. The stuff is too good to quit, though. Health and control. If they ever come, Joey Cantillo, mid-rotation starter at the very least. So if 2025 is that year, that could be really fun. So I'm going to hold on and wait to see that maybe one last time. All right, we'll talk about who I'm selling, and we'll also talk about some guys on the minor league depth camp roster, why that's interesting, and who I'm looking at there on the rest of this episode of Locked On Guardians. We're talking about strategy for the season and having depth in the rotation and finding options throughout the year. Having a winning strategy is everything in sports. It's also super important in life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can help you protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. It makes it easy to find a perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers, they have nearly 40 years of experience, and they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers who can offer one-size-fit-all policies, their licensed agents actually tailor to fit your unique needs. So if you're in good health, you can even find same-day coverage for $5 million, no medical exam required. More affordable than you might think. You can get up to $1 million of coverage for as little as $20 a month. So get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Go to selectquote.com/lockedon today to get started. That is selectquote.com/lockedon. SelectQuote. They shop, you save. All right, let's finish up today's episode with what we're selling. And these ones are probably, at least 2 of these are pretty. I got a fun one at the end here. These are a little bit easier, though. So if you paid attention to Fangraphs, just had their prospects week going the last 2 weeks, really, after the Super Bowl. And one of it culminated in their Zips Top 100 Prospects run by our friend Dan Zimborski and his projection systems. And I like Dan. I think Zips is great. Big follower. We've had him on the show. Zips is a believer in Johnathan Rodriguez. It has Johnathan Rodriguez as a top 100 prospect. I have not seen Johnathan Rodriguez on any other top 100 prospects besides Zips. And I think that's due to the fact that he's passive at the plate. He's very passive. There's not a lot of defense. I don't know how much Zips is counting into defense here. I get we need to have Dan on and ask him. And Johnathan Rodriguez has always hit a ton of ground balls. I feel like I've said this before, but I just don't buy Rodriguez as a top 100 prospect. I haven't even talked about him as a right field contributor this year. I spent a couple of days this week talking about Chase DeLauder in right field. I spent another day about George Valera. Maybe there's still a chance for him in right field this year if they want to wait on DeLauder and they're not beholden to Will Brennan and John Kenzie Noel. I think I like Noel better than Rodriguez because Noel gets to more of his power when he makes contact. Contact's an issue for both these guys. Rodriguez walks more. It is to the point of passivity. He does take a lot of pitches. He will go very deep in counts, probably, too passive to actually be patient. But he'll walk because of that. And the power is real. Don't get me wrong. The raw power for Johnathan Rodriguez is really good. I mean, he has legit got plus power, 60 grade on the 2080 scouting scale. It's 60 grade power. And that translates to 25 or 30 home runs. That raw power is very real. But because he is so passive, because he hits so many ground balls, he doesn't really get to it. So, and I think he also has issues with breaking stuff too. So, like, there's just a lot less usable game power that negates all this, the way that it only holds John Kenzie back because of his lack of patience. That's the only thing that holds him back. So, and again, I think Noel is a better right fielder. I'm not even buying Noel as a right fielder. I'm buying Rodriguez less as a right fielder because of the range and the overall athleticism, I think, are better on Noel. And again, I don't really love Noel as a right fielder, but I think he's better than Rodriguez. They both have equal throwing arms. They're really, really good throwing arms. Both these guys have cannons in right field. I don't buy Noel as a top 100 prospect. He doesn't qualify. Never did. And I don't buy Rodriguez either. I don't think this is, I'll be happy to be wrong because this would be a great story if he is a top 100 prospect in terms of what he actually produces if he gets a shot, and it would be a much needed power threat in the middle of the lineup for the Guardians if he pans out. But I just haven't seen anything other than dominating AAA for it to pan out. I've seen these guys before, Jared Gettert and Jordan Brown. If you're a longtime follower of the minor league system, all had great AAA numbers. There's a lot of guys out there. I'm trying to think of Richie Schaefer. I was convinced Richie Schaefer was going to be a dude in like 2015, and he wasn't. All these dudes have dominated AAA, and so has Rodriguez. 29 home runs the last 2 years in AAA. Triple Crown in AAA. I just don't buy him as a top 100 prospect. Let me know what you think on that. My other thing I'm selling this year is Gabriel Arias' role with the team. Jeff and I have mentioned this on the show before, but if Gabriel Arias is not your starting second baseman, he's not going to be the starting shortstop. They are pretty committed to Brian Rocchio. They've raved about his offseason. They raved about what he did in the playoffs. So Brian Rocchio is the shortstop. There is no Gabriel Arias shortstop from what it looks like. And they're in on Juan Brito, and I talked about Angel Martinez. If Rodriguez is not the starting second baseman on day one, or he's not the starting right fielder, even though I'm buying a lot less these days that he can play the outfield. If he is not a starter on this team out of spring training for one more shot, I don't see how it works. I don't see him being a good bench player here. I don't think it works for him. I don't think it works for the team. I don't see a future for him with the Guardians. I think he'll go somewhere else and continue to get chances because he's a talented player. I want to see if he can play shortstop again. He really struggled at shortstop over the winter with his Dominican winter team. I want to see what he can do there because I did think there was a Gold Glove shortstop there who has power. I just don't buy that him being on the bench here is going to help him. It doesn't help the team, and it might need to happen somewhere else. So maybe he wins the open day second base job. We're all surprised. I'm not against that. If he ends up being the best guy in camp for that, I'm not. But I think it has to be a starter. He has to be given time to do it because I don't think it works for him on the bench. I don't think that kind of talent works on the bench. As I said before, with Angel Martinez, it's hard for young guys to be there. And he's not really a young guy anymore. Now he's 25 and he's had some major league opportunities, but I think he's got to have an everyday role to prove what he's going to do going forward. And I don't know if that happens here. The last thing I am selling on today's Lockdown Guardians, a Wednesday stock watch edition of Lockdown Guardians, Carlos Santana's high socks look. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm showing the clip here. My wife and I love to joke about Carlos Santana's baseball shorts. She calls them, we've both called them clam diggers. They are way up on his legs, looking like he's going in the river and doing some fishing. He has worn them pretty high over the years. He's worn them high over the years, and it's always been funny, and I love it. I'm a big fan of high socks in general in baseball. I think Carlos is starting to push the limit a little bit of how high these are getting. So I'm going to sell Carlos Santana's look here. If you're watching on YouTube, it's over on Reddit too. If you want to get there, it's above the knee. It's like if you were watching the national championship this year, Quinshon Junkins of Ohio State was basically wearing shorts. I love the high socks look. I think this takes it to a whole other level. I don't think even Jim Thome would have done this. But hey, that sparked a run of the World Series. So who knows? Maybe everybody on the team will wear their baseball pants above their knees, and this team will go to the World Series, and they'll call it Carlos Santana's baseball shorts, or we'll have some famous production of it, like we had a success story in '97, like Jim Thome. If you're also looking on YouTube, the same image shows Jose Ramirez wearing high socks, and his high socks have his face on them. I'm buying that. I will buy a pair of Jose Ramirez face socks. Anything with Jose Ramirez on it, I'm buying. Any kind of article of clothing. Gotta love Jose. I'll take those. All right, I promised a little bit of depth camp, just kind of names on this roster. So the Guardians, when they sent out the I think it was the Jacob Junis roster update, they haven't officially announced John Means on February 18th at 10 o'clock, but here's some names I'm interested in. Here's how depth camp works. These are just guys that are kind of over from the minor leagues to pitch, to hit, to just kind of serve as backups, and they get a little more playing time on the major league team in spring training, so they're considered depth camp. So not necessarily a minor league camp, and minor league camp hasn't actually officially started yet. So these are just some extras. But there's some interesting names on this list. I mean, let's start with pitchers. Nick Mikolajchak was an interesting dude at one time as a reliever. I thought he was the best relief prospect in the system. Not anymore. A lot of injuries. He struggled last year, but a name I'm holding on to a little bit. Zane Morehouse was the guy they drafted in 2023. I really like Zane Morehouse. He's a lanky reliever who moved around a lot in college and has some good stuff. I think the Guardians are a good place for him to kind of settle in and get coaching from the same area and the same voice for a couple of years. Should really help. Riley Pint is over in depth camp too, so that's interesting. Carter Spivey, who I think is probably a reliever. He was a starter for the Captains last year, but had a good cutter, had some other good stuff. I think he's probably most likely a reliever, but was a really good innings eater for the Captains last year. And then Jacob Cozart is over in depth camp. So Jacob Cozart had a really, really rough offensive showing in his pro debut. I think it was on 100 plate appearances or less. I'm not going to buy into it a ton. There were some contact issues in college, but gets really good grades as a defender. So I'm interested in him. They've got CJ Kapis in depth camp. You know a lot about CJ Kapis. That's good. Obviously, Travis Bazzana is over there. Jose Devers is over there. Good defender. Actually hits the ball surprisingly hard for a guy who's really short and small, but probably more of a utility infielder. Angel Henao, who is just blowing up everywhere in terms of prospect list. He is on that depth camp roster. Wilfredo Antunez, great name. Got some power, got some speed, good throwing arm. Got to stay healthy. Got to control things between the lines, but he's an interesting guy. He's in depth camp. Jason Churio's in depth camp. That's a lot of fun, too. Obviously, we all know about Churio. Joe Lampe is there. Joe Lampe got off to a hot start last year, bulked up, kind of faded down the stretch, but a lot of people do seem to be interested in him. So those are guys that are over there in depth camp. There's more on that list. Those are just guys that I'm kind of highlighting that I find interesting. When the Guardians announce their rosters and lineups for spring training games, they'll always include some of these guys that are up from depth camp to come in the game later. That's who gets in the game in the 7th or 8th inning when the starters are done. I always like to post those somewhere on social media to tell you who, if you're watching the game somewhere streaming or if you're in person, who you might see in that lineup at some point during the game. I always look for that to see who's most interesting. So follow along this year if you want more of those. Hey, great time to subscribe to YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. Make sure you're hitting the auto download. Appreciate that. To make sure you're always getting it into your podcast feed wherever you get podcasts. Helps us a lot and helps you not miss an episode. Can always use an Apple Podcast review to help out the algorithm. We had some good ones recently. And then if you want to sign to be an insider, I talked all about those benefits earlier. You can do that. The link to that is in the show description, and you can email the show if you want to do that. We got a really good email from Austin. Austin, I'll get back to you. I appreciate your email. It was a long one. I will get back to you, though. You can email us at loguardiansshow@gmail.com if you want to jump in over there. If you're not a YouTube commenter, you're not a social media person, which I understand. Hey, tomorrow we've got a familiar face joining the show. It's going to be Jeff Ponce of Baseball America. Jeff's going to come on. We're going to talk about some Guardians prospects. Obviously, we're also going to talk about the idea of high school picks holding their value longer in trade. So Jeff Ellis and I have talked a lot about the approach of drafting high school players, high school pitchers, and those guys being more tradable because they hold their value longer. I'm going to talk to Jeff about what he thinks about that. We'll talk about, Guardians prospects in general. Maybe we'll get into some draft stuff. I'm not sure. I'm sure we'll talk some favorite burgers, favorite road trip foods too, as Jeff's been all over the place. So we'll have Jeff on tomorrow, and I'm hoping to have one other guest this week. I think we'll do a mailbag most likely on Friday. If not, we'll talk about that. I'll let you know, but you can send some questions for that. In the meantime, thank you for tuning in to today's Locked On Guardians. Thank you for listening every day. Whether you're an everydayer, or if it's your first time, or you're just, catching an episode you find interesting, you can go back and listen to some old ones. We really appreciate that. And I'll be back with you with Jeff Ponce on Thursday. In the meantime, go Guardians, go stay warm.